Hello and welcome to another episode of Utopia Restorations. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Will, and this is our E30 Touring that needs quite a bit of work. It's got 250,000 miles on it. I'm the second owner, and this is episode 2 of us getting it back on the road and restoring it. So what I'm going Hello, this is VoiceOver William. Damn, that's a cool hoodie. I thought I'd do a slightly different sort of version this week and go and show you some slightly longer cuts of actually working on the car. Slightly more unedited, showing you the realities of working on a classic car if you're looking to get your own and what it's actually like as opposed to the sped up cut. Damn, that is a really cool hoodie. Sped up cut version that you see on a lot of YouTubes. And you guys have asked for more restoration content, so I want to show you all of it throughout the process and what we're going to be doing. So if you are enjoying these, make sure you drop a comment, a like and subscribe, so it would really help us out. So here is the shameless plug. These are our hoodies, part of our new drop, which you can find below, tagged in the product, or you can find via our website. These are really cool and really comfy. So this bad boy is the engine bay. As you can see, it's been sat outside for a while. It was going to be broken, but I've managed to save it from where it was going to be broken. It is a 1.6 and it's all a bit old. So yeah, I think essentially what I'm going to do is just start having a look at everything. Look at the fuel, look at the fluids. It did get it to run and it sounded like it was only running on one cylinder. We do have new spark plugs and some extra bits. I think a lot of plastics, just due to their age, have probably perished. So I'm going to get some lighting moved around so we can see things a bit better and get a bit of a time lapse and show you what I'm doing in the engine as we're working on it. So first of all, let me show you my highly advanced light setup. This is just a house light that's plugged in and strapped to the top of the engine. So we can now actually start to see, do you want to get a lot of the leaves cleared just to make things a bit cleaner to work with? And then what we're going to be going through is checking a lot of things, seeing how crusty things are, seeing what fluids are like, seeing what engine oils are like, and going through all that good stuff. Then yeah, I want to start pulling plugs and having a look at those to see what we think, and just trying to get all of it a bit cleaner really. I may get the air compressor on just to blow a lot of this out of the way, so that'll make things a lot easier. And I didn't lie, here is that air compressor. Now admittedly, you can see there, it is a paraffin cleaner, or whatever you want to call them, which can actually be quite useful as a jet wash, by the way, as I've discovered recently. Fill it up with water. I've lost the air gun in the move, so I'm not quite sure where that is at the moment. As you'll see in one of our other videos doing the barn restoration, the new place needs a lot of work and is going to take a lot of time to get there. And unfortunately, part of that has meant that a lot of tools and things are still about. They have been moved. I'm not 100% sure as to where they are. So this will do for the moment as getting some things moved. As I mentioned previously, this car believed to be taken off the road in around 2012, 2013. So in theory, as of last year when I got it, it was actually 10 years off the road and had been sat under a tree for several years. All things considered, it's not actually that bad on the sort of dirt and mess that this car currently has. So let's get into it then. My plan here is to go through and, as mentioned, look at all of the fluids, see what they're doing, see what some of them smell like, what colour they are, and then have a bit of a plan. So that is the Rudderlock power steering, which was a bit hard, so I decided to give everything a clean, hitting it with some quick detailer from Polished Pigs, our detailing partner. This thing smells amazing. It smells like like a strawberry sort of milkshake, I'd say. So anytime I clean a car with it, it's absolutely fantastic. Just giving it all a bit of a squirt. This doesn't really affect any perishing plastic, as it will be wiped off. And I just really want to see what everything is like. I do have to say, compared to a lot of the other cars that I've worked on, a lot of Land Rovers particularly, and some other German classics like a Porsche, I do have to say the state of this interior, well, the interior of the engine, is amazing compared to the years that it's been sat out there. And actually, yes, it is quite bad, but once you wipe it off, it's actually in really, really good nick. So yeah, just getting a lot of things clean so I can get them open and get them checked. Like the fuse box looks amazing. Still sort of looks very OEM. I've seen some other ones that sort of perished a bit with a bit of light and a bit of fading and cracking. But all of this is pretty clean. I do sort of get through it a bit more, start to get through some of the engine, but just trying to get things a bit cleaner. I think at some point I'll make a plan to either get like the engine parts vapor blasted or go over them with a wire wheel and sort of do it that way. I do have access to a vapor blaster, but I may do it sort of a bit of a version where you could possibly do it as well if you don't have access to a vapor blaster, and some ways you could do it. So yeah, just giving all a bit of a clean and a bit of a go at the moment. Now my plan here today isn't anything major. I do have some parts to do on the engine, but I wanted to give it a clean, check all the fluids and see where we are at with the engine. This is going to be a large project, and I know the majority of it is actually welding, but I do sort of have something within me that says, why has this car been taken off the road as the previous owner cared about it? Typically, it's because the age and the costs. It possibly had several £1,000s of welding to do to it, and at the time the car wouldn't be worth a lot, so it would have been very easy just to get rid of the car and get something new. But for me, I need to find out what that is. Is it the engine? It's actually got a bit of issues with it. I do fortunately have a spare 1.8, which I could possibly look to build and put in at a later date, or build and sell. Or do I actually find anything wrong with this? Is there any knocking? Is there anything like that? Previously mentioned, when we did get it to start, it did actually sound like it was on one cylinder and only ran for a bit before choking out. So there's definitely further things to investigate here. Now, as you can see here, I'm struggling with what I thought was a reservoir. Turned out to be a plug. I'll be honest, I don't actually know a great deal about these engines at the moment. I don't actually have a great deal of knowledge about them with sort of mechanics in terms of like a manual or something like that. So I haven't actually looked at any engine diagrams or anything before going into this, and just going off of my knowledge with cars. And yeah, it looked like it was some sort of isolation plug or something like that, some sort of connector to go to the further wiring harness. I have no idea about that one. So time to get on to things like brake reservoir. It is quite interesting in this car that it's of course right hand drive, but all the brake reservoir is on the left hand drive. And as you can see, doing the classic trick of giving it a bit of a dip to see what it's like inside. And I'll show that to the camera. Bit of a heave to get the power steering cap off. They generally are. Often find this with the TD5. For some reason they always seem to be rather stuck on. And as you can see with this fluid, it is not nice. So I just think that could potentially be just the amount of time that it's been in there, or not been changed before it was taken off the road. Because why would you put new fluid in? You know your car's not coming back. I do have to say this one is not good at all. So definitely need to be drained. Do you wonder if there's maybe some problems further down with any seals or anything like that, making sure there's any leaking. Onto the airbox now, and you can see I've taken off that MAF sensor. One of the things I do have to say that I am impressed with for the age of this BMW is how a lot of the clips work. It's not just sort of those button clips that you get in the new ones, or the sort of prongs together. A lot of them are sort of that very satisfactory twist and pull that they do look in, which is very nice. Now this is loose. As you can see, one of the bolts has died a death, and of course my consideration is, do we sort of keep this OEM setup, or do I go for something more like a cone filter or a bit of K&N? This filter actually was dirty but didn't seem too old. So I mean, old in terms of when the car was done. And you can see, I think a squirrel or something has lived in here whilst it was parked. Or try to cut some nuts because those look rather chewed. Unfortunately, it was a very clean squirrel, so I don't want that too much. So yeah, not really too worried about that, and it can survive maybe a drive or two even with one bolt in it. Yeah, just really easy and quite straightforward. I've got some other older cars that have been German, like 94, which are a bit more of a faff to work with. Admittedly slightly older though. This is technically 94, this one, I believe. Don't quite know that. Cars from my old older. But yeah, some bits are loose, something's happened in here, and that's why we're here, to investigate and see what's going on. So airbox, not really worried about. May look at getting a cone filter for that later. Do sort of quite like that big old square one. And yes, we're going to go around with a pick in the next video and try and identify our major errors. I do have a whole new front end for that, so I could replace this, but it's sort of weighing up what it's going to be worth to do that versus what the car's going to be worth at the end. So now it was always giving things a bit of a cleaning out the squirrel's mess from the airbox, so we can start to put it back together on this end, and then it will start to move to the other side. Have a look at some things over there. So this is what I was talking about earlier. Look how satisfactory these clips are as they go in and slot and clip into place. I think it's awesome. You can get a lot of these now are sort of like new modern wiring harnesses for engines or race cars with quick releases. But it's just cool to see it sort of on an old car that's possibly a bit over-engineered. But as you can tell, this has stood the test of time. It's always something that we like. And now I am struggling with the dipstick. This was something that took a bit of time to get out and a little bit of Googling. Because you know when you're pulling something and it really doesn't want to come, you're wondering, oh, is this correct? And you meant to unscrew it, you meant to do something. I was correct, it was just stuck in, which is a common fault. You'll see me maybe win that battle later on. Yeah, I'm going to keep going with it and keep trying. I did say this was going to be slightly more unfiltered. I do want to show you this is sort of the pain of working on classic cars, you know? You're getting through things quite quickly. And then suddenly something like this comes along, and this is the pain that is actually what's going to happen. Got distracted, started playing with the fan. Some of the belts, admittedly, could potentially be replaced in the future. But again, how much do we want to go and how far do we want to go? What do I want to do with the car? I'm not really sure for any of those answers. I did ask on Instagram, what should I do with it? Should it be road, rally, or drift? A lot of people went towards rally. A lot of sort of my aesthetic is more rally things. So, of course, that was a potential for that. It's given me some ideas to ponder on, but we may visit that again in a later video. Now the rad, this is the bit I'm maybe not so enthusiastic on. Yeah, it's pretty far down, which we'll see in a second. You can see the confusion as I go for a second dip there. Yes, trying to look further. This level is pretty low, and yeah, this could possibly throw up a few more questions later on of what's happened. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it has all just leaked out. I admittedly do have to say the fluid doesn't look great when I do pull it up, which is this very long one coming in now. Yeah, not good. So this does pull up questions for you. Maybe is there actually a head gasket gone on this engine? Doesn't seem like it, and if it does get running by the end of this video, I don't know, it's not going to be long enough to be able to see those sort of issues. But yes, that could be a fun one. Having a quick bit of a fiddle here with the throttle mechanism, as they are sort of drive-by-wire. I do know that the throttles on these can get stuck, particularly if they've been left. So giving it a bit of a clean up and seeing that over there. Now over to the other side. So on this side, equally same story, all needs a bit of a clean, and bits that I want to check is sort of the oil. I couldn't get the dipstick out, so maybe thinking, has that caused a bit of a vacuum? So that can sometimes happen. But just a lot of it is a bit of an exploration, trying to get things a bit cleaner, trying to have a look in. Fairly obvious, but just because the age of the engine and the amount of sort of muck and dirt that's on it, I don't want anything going into the engine. So just trying to clean it off and actually get the cap off. Again, like in here, I didn't go any closer. I thought, here you go, this might actually release the vacuum, but it didn't work there. And so we may have to try some other things. But yeah, in the engine, it doesn't look too awful. I think it is worth running some sort of engine cleaner through it. Admittedly, I'm not overly 100% convinced by a lot of those sort of engine cleaners, but equally, I don't think it's bad. And this was the discovery, a live wasp. Thought it was dead, and then it started moving. Didn't enjoy that in February. So that wasp has unfortunately left us now. But yeah, I think I'm going to run some engine cleaner through it and try to give it a bit of a clean. Once it's up in the air, I know with the subframes on these, you maybe can't, but try and get the oil pan off just to give a bit of a bottom end clean, maybe a bit of a flush through. More plastic things are coming off. Now this one I believe is the clutch reservoir. Yeah, again, dirty fluid, so that's not as good. Oh, actually, I think this one may be the brake reservoir. Don't quote me on that. Don't know too much about these at the moment. But either way, dirty fluid, they again needs to be dropped and drained. So I'm going to have a bit more of a further investigate on that. Just having a look at a lot of the plastics. A lot of things have actually held up well. I thought a lot more of the plastics would be perishing or a bit more upset, you know, when they get that sort of rubbery crackiness. But actually, a lot more of them have been holding on. So that's quite good. And still trying with the dipstick here. And finally, with a bit of perseverance, a drum roll please. There we go, it has released. So it is a thing with these, that the O-rings can sort of swell and get stuck. I did hear that it was turning within, so that's why I thought it wasn't necessarily rusted in. But you can see the oil there. Doesn't look the happiest. Trying to give it a whiff and see what's going on. But yeah, it could be quite thin really compared to what it should be. Sort of expect on this mileage and this age that the oil maybe even a bit thicker rather than thinner. So yes, ponders some more questions. But going to give things a bit of a clean. Just like to make it a bit cleaner. So that's the plan with this engine. So giving it all a bit of spruce. This is where the battery box is. Car didn't have a battery, but I do have a lovely new Lucas one to go with it. Bit of sort of OEM vibes. I like a lot of Lucas parts on the Land Rover, so why not always have some on the BMW? Maybe it should have been Bosch though for the German car. Yes, going to give it all a bit of a clean up, and then we're going to have a look at spark plugs. So you've got the coils off and out of the way to give a bit more space. Interestingly, you can't see it on this camera angle, but you can sort of by my hand. Between where the spark plugs are and the exhaust is, there is sort of a heat shield. It's a bit of a wavy platform that was slightly in the way. It did have to be slightly manipulated, shall I say, to get to the spark plugs. Now, I know there was a lot of crud in there as they're further down and did try to sort of give them a clean out before, but wanted to, of course, make sure none of that went into the cylinders. So just going gently and easy, trying to get these out one by one with the spark plug remover, which again has a grip in it, which was really useful because I don't think if I had that I would have been able to get them out on this end. And there you go, first one out, pretty black and pretty choked. So clearly hadn't been changed for a while prior to when the car was sort of left. And I won't give away any spoilers, but equally no surprises for how the other ones turned out. So there we go, all four are out, and as you can see, all pretty choked up. So definitely worth changing them. I'm doing this intentionally. It's quite an easy sort of change or something to fix. Not very expensive to get 4 of these Bosch ones. And like I've been saying before, this was sort of my fix to see, is the engine going? Is it just something simple and we can have it running and sounding okay, or does it actually need something a lot more, something a bit more desperate? But so far, it just looks like the spark plugs needed a bit of a change to get these ones in. So getting the new ones in, first off, put them in the socket and then by hand, just sort of feeling the thread and putting them in before I start ratcheting them. One of the things I am terrified about, and I would say like is easily done, but also just take a bit of care and you'll be fine, is cross-threading your spark plugs. Something that can be rectified, but just a big pain that you particularly do not need in your life. And particularly on these ones, where you can't actually see where the entry is for the spark plugs and it's sort of by feel. Just wanting to make sure I was taking my time and doing it slowly to make sure they were in and seated and okay before you start going. One of the things, of course, you can tell is if they are cross-threaded when you start going, when you put the ratchet on, is it will sort of feel fine to go and then a bit of resistance, then feel fine again. So if you are feeling that, maybe you need to just take it out, wiggle it around, make sure it's seated properly, and then pop it in. But yeah, fortunately for these, as far as I know, none of these are cross-threaded, so hopefully it'll be okay. So these are now all back in and we've given the engine a clean. Now it's time to clean up some of the bits from this job and get onto the exciting part of seeing will it fire or won't it fire. So if we adjust, the new sparks are in and we have got it all put back together. So can you get the battery in, can you get the camera set up, we want to check the lines in on the fuel, and then after that I'm going to give it a fire, see what happens, see how many cylinders it's running on, and have a quick think. So battery's in, check the fuel line, doesn't have a lot of fuel in it, we're just going to give it a crank, see what happens, not fire it for long, shut it off. Here you go, this is the slightly embarrassing bit. After you press play on your own camera, you do need to walk around and actually get in the car. And then once you get into the seat, start fiddling around with keys and fun things like that. So hopeful there. It sounded like it did want to go, or at least sounded better, but equally no firing, which considering we did have it going, it's a bit more concerning. Sometimes do just like to give it a bit of a wait to let the star smokes cool down and then give it another go. So interesting to see this back, because I did fire it and did sound like it was running on all cylinders, which is a huge bonus. When I was in the car, the revs sort of weren't really idling. It would go to say about 1,000, and then as you could hear, would shoot up to about 3.5k. I thought at the time, reviewing this footage, that when I put my foot down, the throttle was getting stuck, and that was what was doing it. Now looking back on that, don't think it is. So potentially there's something further to investigate there. But what I am happy with is that the engine is starting and that it is running, and running on all cylinders. It does sound quite cool because there is no exhaust at the moment, but another bit to investigate further, which I'll show you in the next episode after the rust, so maybe in 2, is the gear lever is quite stiff, which also makes me wonder, is there something with the trans? Who knows? We'll see. But yeah, it did actually start, so pretty happy with that. I was having a bit of a play with the interior, and discovered one of the rear left indicators out, so definitely won't be getting through an MOT this week. But yeah, is running, has started. Considering we brought this before summer as a non-runner, I'm pretty happy with that. As it's new battery, I am just disconnecting it as I don't need to leave it in the car, so all in all, quite happy with this. So there we go. Had a check over the engine. I'm not happy with all the fluids, and a lot of things need to be drained, and a lot of things need to be changed. But changing the spark plugs and giving it a bit of a run has showed that it does sound like it's actually running on all cylinders. Maybe not necessarily to start with, and there's definitely further investigation to happen. Things that I do want to do next is fuel pump and fuel lines, along with like the fuel filter, because I do think it's not getting enough fuel. Also, when we did fill up the tank, it definitely leaked, so I think there's something a lot further going on there. But all in all, I'm now pretty happy with this, because that's what I want to check, is the engine was fine, because the next bit is we can now get it lifted, start doing the things underneath, like we need brake lines, a lot of welding, and doing the fuel lines as well, so we can then improve the engine. So now we can get it lifted, start doing some fluids, get those changed, start getting closer. So yeah, really happy with it. Got a lot of progress considering the price that I've got this for and what's been happening so far. It does actually run and does actually start, which is a fantastic step forward. So if you are enjoying this series and you are looking forward to the next episode, make sure you drop a like and subscribe. We'll see you next week in the next episode. Cheers.